Start before you're ready. Success favors action. Mel Robbins. Start before you're ready. Those 4 words form a flashlight that cuts through every shadow of hesitation ever cast across an ambitious mind, and their source. Mel Robbins wields the beam with the urgency of someone who has watched far too many bright ideas stall at the starting line. You, reading these lines, almost certainly carry an unlaunched project, an unrealized expansion, an untouched investment. You may already know the statistics. Most small business concepts never see daylight. Most promising side hustles never get a single paying customer. Most would-be investors spend years researching while the compounding clock ticks loudly in the background. What almost no one admits is that the raw material of every one of those unrealized dreams is not a lack of knowledge, a shortage of capital, or an absence of opportunity. It is waiting for clarity, waiting for a perfect plan, waiting for green lights up and down the highway of circumstance, waiting for some external validator to declare the timing ideal, waiting, in short, for readiness, an imaginary milestone that keeps receding as you approach. Imagine a construction crew that refuses to break ground until every cloud disappears from the sky. Picture an author who will not write the first sentence until every paragraph of a 90-chapter saga is perfectly outlined. Visualize an investor determined never to buy until the market stops fluctuating. Absurd, right? Yet entrepreneurs, business owners, and would-be capital allocators fall into subtly similar traps every day. They tinker, draft, prototype, survey, revise, model, rehearse again, polish, then scrap, then restart while someone bolder sprints past them with half the data and twice the courage. And here's the brutal truth. The marketplace rewards speed of execution far more reliably than it rewards thoroughness of preparation. So where does this gravitational pull toward over-preparedness come from? Partly, it is the residue of school where we were praised for correct answers and punished for wrong ones. Partly, it is the echo of corporate culture where a single misstep can tank a performance review. Partly, it is neurology, our brains defaulting to safety biases that once kept our ancestors alive on the savannah. But mostly, it is a misunderstanding of what real-world success actually is. Success is not a ceremonial ribbon you cut after flawless execution. Success is a messy, iterative climb that rewards those who move first, course correct, fast, and stay in motion. Every thriving brand you admire has a version 1 product that looks embarrassingly primitive next to its current iteration. Every property magnate you envy has a first deal with awkward financing terms that make them cringe at cocktail parties. Every legendary venture capitalist has portfolio write-offs that would humble a rookie if you saw the numbers. The difference between them and the masses is not superior foresight, it is faster feedback loops. They shipped, they bought, they launched. They learned in real time, while the rest of the world was still debating. Mel Robbins distills this principle into her 5-second rule, counting down 5 - 4 - 3 - 2 - 1 and physically acting before self-doubt floods the system. Neurologically, it works because action launches the prefrontal cortex before the limbic system can inject fear. Psychologically, it works because visible motion builds identity. Capital, you begin to see yourself as a person who executes. Strategically, it works because the asymmetry of upside to downside is rarely obvious until you leap. A hastily recorded video can spark viral traction that would have eluded a studio-quality production, buried in revisions. A small pre-order campaign can validate product-market fit months before you sink 6 figures into inventory. A modest index tracking purchase can teach you more about market psychology in 6 weeks than a year of theoretical reading. Action is a magnifying glass. It concentrates diffuse intent into a beam that ignites opportunity. Of course, critics object. Isn't this reckless? What about due diligence? What about fiduciary duty? Those are legitimate concerns, and they are not in conflict with starting before you're ready. Risk management is a continuous process, not a per-flight checklist you must complete before leaving the runway. Entrepreneurs who iterate quickly can cap losses early and pivot away from doomed trajectories long before a slow-moving competitor even realizes something is wrong. Investors who begin with a small position gain real-time information that no spreadsheet provides. They can scale in or exit based on live data instead of hypotheticals. Owners who test launch a service in a single zip code gather customer insights that save millions when they expand nationally. The myth that speed and prudence are mutually exclusive has cost more fortunes than any market crash. Yet knowing this rarely melts the ice of inertia on its own, because the human brain is a meaning-making machine. It rations willpower according to the stories we tell ourselves about risk, worthiness, and identity. So let's rewrite 3 of the most toxic stories in entrepreneurial folklore. 1. I need more information. Information is useful only when placed in context created by action. One cold call will teach you more believable data about your market than 50 hours on industry forums. 2. I don't have enough resources. Scarcity is a feature, not a bug. It forces creativity, cultivates strategic partnerships, and inoculates you against wasteful spending patterns. Bootstrap founders often outrun well-funded competitors because they optimize by necessity. 3. I can't afford mistakes. Reality, you cannot afford not to make mistakes, because each delay compounds the opportunity cost of an earned experience. Mistakes made early are tuition payments to the school of reality. They get costlier, not cheaper, the longer you wait. Rewrite the script, and your nervous system follows. Energy rises, focus sharpens, action accelerates. Now, let's translate principle into practice with a 3-phase execution loop you can set in motion today. Phase 1. Micro-launch. Define the smallest possible version of your idea that still delivers value. An entrepreneur can pre-sell 10 consulting slots before building a full agency. A property investor can syndicate a single duplex before chasing larger multifamily assets. A fund manager can share a 2-page thesis deck to attract initial LP interest before drafting a 100-page PPM. Set a 72-hour deadline, claim a public accountability stake, a LinkedIn post, and email to your network and press send. Phase 2. Rapid feedback. For 7 days, treat every customer question, every pricing objection, every click-through metric as gold. Journal what resonates, what confuses, what converts. Ignore vanity metrics, likes, vague praise, and focus on traction signals, orders, deposits, referrals. Within 14 days, you will possess empirical insight that the planner version of yourself might never uncover. Phase 3. Iterative expansion. Scale only the components that validated. Automate or outsource bottlenecks that slowed you down. Inject capital where ROI already glimmers. Set a new micro-launch, larger scope, tighter thesis, and loop again. 3 cycles of this 30-day rhythm outperform most annual strategic plans in both agility and profitability. The deeper magic beneath the tactic is identity transformation. With every decisive move, you reinforce a self-concept. I am a person who acts swiftly, learns publicly, and improves relentlessly. Neuroscientists call this self-signaling. Behavioral economists call it commitment bias. Venture coaches call it momentum stacking. Mel Robbins calls it bias toward action. Whatever the label, the effect is cumulative and irreversible. Confidence blossoms not from motivational speeches heard, but from courageous acts completed. But momentum never occurs in a vacuum. Environment either nourishes or starves it. Audit your surroundings. Are you trading ideas with builders or with armchair quarterbacks? Does your podcast queue inspire execution or analysis paralysis? Do your financial models assume speed, or do they punish it with bureaucratic friction? Curate inputs until action becomes the path of least resistance. A brief word to the investor reading this with a skeptical eyebrow. Markets appear unforgiving, but they love decisiveness. Stepping in early, when the narrative is muddy and valuations are uncomfortable, is exactly how outsized returns are born. Howard Marks calls it second-level thinking. Peter Thiel calls it escaping competition. Buffett calls it fearful when others are greedy, greedy when others are fearful. Mel Robbins would summarize the whole doctrine far more succinctly. Move. If doubt still lingers, conduct a personal audit of your own highlight reel. Trace any triumph you cherish: closing a marquee client, landing a prime location, flipping a distressed property for a windfall. You will likely discover that the inciting incident was not perfect preparation, but a decision you made under conditions of uncertainty that felt, at best, 60% comfortable. That fraction, about 2/3, is your sweet spot of practical readiness. Below it, you flirt with reckless gambling. Above it, you drift into analysis paralysis. Trust the ratio. One final paradox. Starting before you're ready doesn't merely increase the speed of success, it deepens the meaning of success. Because when progress occurs through lived experimentation rather than sanitized theory, every milestone carries a story, every profit margin hides a memory, every negotiated term sheet echoes with tension you felt in real time. The venture becomes not just a source of income, but a chronicle of courage exercised. That narrative capital compounds harder than any interest rate you will ever chase. Now is the part where most articles politely wind down. This one refuses soft landings, because your next decisive move demands ignition, not lullabies. So let the clock start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Draft the pitch email you have postponed, and hit send. Fill the cart with that first tranche of index funds, and execute. Book the discovery call with the contractor for the microflip property. Publish the landing page offering your beta service package. As soon as you act, drop a marker in the comments below describing what you launched so the community can rally, cross-pollinate, and hold you to it. Smash that like button. If this piece shoved you across the line, share it with a friend who's still waiting for everything to line up. Subscribe so you never again miss a timely kick in the ambitions. Remember, readiness is a mirage. Action is the oasis. Success salutes the one who steps forward first.